I'm going to be here until around 5:10.
Got it.
So
sorry about that, Rob. Thank you. All right, so the minutes pass. Nominations, resignations, correspondence by the superintendent.
Yes, I just wanted to take a moment on the correspondence. I think all of us here as board members and administrators saw the tragic events that happened out in Minneapolis and find them to be totally unacceptable. As a school district and SAU, we're working as an administrative team on action plans to confront racism in our school wherever it may exist. We are currently going through some professional development, looking at a variety of options, and we'll be giving the board an update in July, kind of where we're heading. I want to thank those members of the community who are working with me and who have reached out and contacted me as we do our best at SAU 41 to address this situation. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. So because the audio I'm receiving is a little bit underwater, did I understand you to say that you'll have a report on this topic in July for our July meeting?
That's correct, Tammy. That's correct, Tammy.
Thank you so much. Other members, you have comments, questions?
Thank you. I look forward to hearing the update in July.
Same.
Ditto for sure. Thank you so much, Andy. I'm glad you got ahead of that. It can't be emphasized enough how important it is, so appreciate it. Our next agenda item, as I flip through my script, thank you, Dawn.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? I'm sorry. Do we need to each say that we're participating remotely?
Yes, and you know what? Rob jumped past that because he had to get this other material in front of us. Why don't we take care of that? Thanks for reminding us. So the script for this is due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis and in accordance with Governor Sununu's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this board is authorized to meet electronically. Board members and members of the administration are participating via Zoom. Each member of the board is asked to state for the record where they are, why their attendance in person is not reasonably practical, who, if anyone, is with them, and whether or not they are able to hear the proceedings. Again, Dawn has provided us, our recording secretary, with a little script for this to help us get it right. So it starts with me. I can state I am participating electronically from home due to the COVID crisis. And therefore cannot attend in person. I am alone in a closed room and will remain so throughout this meeting. And I can hear the proceedings so far. Brooke?
I'm participating electronically from home. My attendance in person was not reasonable due to COVID-19. I'm alone in this room and I can hear the proceedings. And could I just ask one more question once we're through about the statement that Mr. Corey made after
we have to, can we please wait and get everyone's statement about their Amy is right that we are formally required to make these statements, and then let's go right back to it, okay?
That's what I said, yeah, thank you.
Great. Carol? Or Amy, I guess whoever's next.
Amy Kellner. I'm apparently having some video issues. You can't see me, but I'm here participating electronically from home. My attendance in person is not practical given COVID-19. I'm alone in the room and I can hear the proceedings.
Hi, this is Carol Roy. I'm participating electronically from home. My attendance in person is not reasonably practicable due to COVID-19. I'm alone in the room and I can hear the proceeding.
Very good. Thanks, Amy, for catching that. I appreciate it.
And Rob Mann, I'm currently connected remotely into this meeting due to the COVID-19 pandemic issue, as my attendance, in-person attendance, is not practical at this time. But I am here in my home office and can hear the proceedings as well.
Very good.
I do have just a comment on Andy's statement. I think our actions and what we do as a district have to always be grounded and seated in being inclusive. And I think we're all kind of dealing with the things that have taken place out in Minnesota and the things that have happened in other cities and across our country. And, I always felt we've done a very good job at what we do. I think there's always room to do better, and I always want to make sure that we not only talk about these things, but we show it in actions as well. So I appreciate the superintendent's statements on this.
Thanks, Rob. Brooke, go ahead.
So I needed a little bit of processing time, so I didn't have a question or comment prepared initially. A little bit piggybacking on what Rob said, some of you may be aware that the other districts, well, the high school and the middle school have put out statements to the families via email, and I'm wondering if that, I would like to see that from our school district as well. You know, referencing racism and the recent events and the condemning of racism, and that we are as a district working, has mentioned, and so I wanted to inquire about that.
That statement will be coming from the district and as well as from me. One of the differences between the high school, middle school district and the Hollis district is the number of professional development days we have at the end of the school year. So Rick was able to do some training with his staff, and then we've done some training as a leadership team. And I think this is what I'll call step one. And I really think the critical part of this is the plan to move forward.
Okay, so I guess I think the importance of communicating that to the community at large would be a very positive thing, to let the community know that that's what we're doing.
I agree. And in terms of the other piece that's really important is having the ability to have a discussion with the school board as we formulate that direction. And that's what tonight's statement was, to just kind of allow you as board members to know that we'll be moving forward. I'll be making a similar statement in Brookline, and then later tonight at the co-op as well.
Any other comments from board members? I want to clarify Brooke's question. I think I understood, Brooke, that you were saying that the principals of those of the high school, at least, since I have a high school kid, I received a message from the principal that was very firm and affirmative. Is that what you're kind of getting at? Is a statement from building level to families, or are you just looking for that larger picture that Andy's describing?
Yes, it did come from the building level, both on the high school and the middle school level. More recently was the middle school level. Mm-hmm. So I thought for continuity, and I would like to request that if it's feasible, and
So my question is, because I don't get all the correspondence from the principals, since I don't have a kiddo in the building, did the principals of our two buildings send out correspondence to families on this issue? The way that, say, Mr. Barnes did at the high school, or Mr. Gerzone?
Not yet, Tammy. And we've been going through our professional development.
Oh, no, I understand. That's fine.
Everybody's at different stages.
So just in response, as the acting chair, I'm just trying to clarify what Brooke's request is and make sure that the administration understands what her request is. I certainly support it as an individual member of the board.
Yeah, we will be coming out with a statement, which is what I think board member Arthur is looking for.
Excellent, thank you. Are we good with that then? Brooke, did that answer your question?
Partway, yes. I mean, I think ideally coming at the building levels would
be my preference as a board member and as a community member, but I think I hear Andy saying that it's going to be at the SAU level at this point. Is that what I'm understanding?
There'll probably be multiple messages, Brooke, and that's what I mean by it's an action plan that's ongoing. It's not going to be a statement next week, and then that's the last time we talk about the issue.
Excellent. Yeah. Good. Good. We're good? Thank you. Thanks very much, everyone. So our next agenda item is the principal's reports.
Hey, Tammy. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Candy.
So I'll talk a little bit for Hughes and some major things that were happening. And then Paula, if you want to go after, that would be great. So we had a successful ending of our year. I think both Paula and I really wanted to make it special for our 3rd and 6th graders. And I know that those events, even after a lot of planning, it's always a worry until you get there. And it seems like both of those events went really, really well from the feedback that we've received from the community. And the staff felt really comfortable at the Big Wave Goodbye. I want to publicly thank the Hollis Police Department for sending so many officers over to help us with traffic to make sure that our reverse parade went smoothly. And really appreciate that, kind of give back to our community, because that did take a lot of coordination between both the school and the police department. We have, that we've been talking about our building work, and you can certainly read everything on the reports that we have, provided. I think that we're especially proud of being able to have the time to do some projects as well as deep clean in our buildings and continue that as we move forward. Our focus now is really looking at, re-entry and transition plans, and what are all the aspects that it takes to make sure that we provide as safe a place as we can for all of our staff members and our students, and making sure that everyone feels comfortable when they walk through the doors in the fall. So that's kind of where we're focusing on, making sure that our staff has what they need and we get feedback from them before. Today was their last day, so before they left for the summer, even though many are committed to whatever model we have and working with us throughout that time. And I'm excited to announce that we found our 6th grade teacher at the upper elementary school. It was a great process, different than what we typically would do, but really I think got to the heart of what we were trying to find out: what kind of personality, how do you present as an educator and as a team member. So those are some of the things from the upper. Paula?
Hi, everybody. Let's see. So we did a special 3rd grade drive-by for all of our 3rd graders. We went to 84 houses. Initially, we thought it was going to take us about 2 hours. We ended up driving around for about 5 hours. It was well worth it. We had balloons on the car that flew off immediately after we turned out of the building, so that wasn't a lot of fun, and we had a really good time seeing all the kids and their families. Everybody was very appreciative, so that went really well. We were happy to make it special. They all got t-shirts. Thank you to the PTA who ordered them for the concert that we typically have. They got their certificates and they got their recorder belts, which was all things that they were looking forward to getting at the end of the year. Our classroom teachers did celebrations with their classes. We had specialists and other people attend and be able to say goodbye, so that was fun. We just got done, Candy, I believe, is in the same spot reviewing report cards. Everybody handed them in. We're good to go. It's just a review and getting everything set up for the end of the year, for parents being able to view them. Our building is coming along well as well. We have a lot of summer work, as you all know, coming along our way, and we are focusing on getting that all scheduled and ready to go, collaborating with the SAU office, a lot of talk with Kelly to make sure that we have everything in order. Our teachers every year submit summer work that they propose to do over the summer. And a lot of our focus this year was reflection on remote learning, what best practices we can take from that we could possibly use in the classroom. What can we change going forward? Should we have to use remote learning going forward? So a lot of that work over the summer is going to be a lot of reflection and whatnot. We did get a lot of feedback. Some parents just took the time to give us some nice feedback on remote learning, which was really great. The things that went really well and the things that we should improve on. And it was just very thoughtful. And I want to thank those parents who did that for just taking the time to do that. It was really nice. It was very thoughtful and it was really helpful to us. So we've reflected on that and we're looking forward to doing that summer work as well. Like Candy said, we have our task force ready to go. We're doing a lot of talking and getting ready to figure out how we're going to start the year. And I think everybody is hoping and that we'll get to see everybody's faces and work forward and get through it. And I think with all the minds that we have on board, we'll be able to do that. That's all from my building.
From fellow board members.
Yeah, I would just like to comment that I think you both of you did a great job kind of steering through this storm of COVID and, you know, getting us to the point that we could deliver remote learning, at least to some extent, all granted that it not perfect, but we seem to have gotten through it. Of course, we have the summer and the fall coming, so there's plenty of more work to be done. But I just wanted to, you know, voice my appreciation for all the hard work.
Brooke?
Yeah, I thought that I have a student at Hughes, and the closure of having the parade back to the school was really important, and we really appreciated that. It was so well attended, and I did see on social media and made me tear up the third grade promotion, some of the visits to the houses. I thought that was amazing. So really important things that for the students. So thank you very much.
Carol, anyone? Okay, I was going to ask you, here's a new 6th grade teacher name, and I think I also missed another teacher's name that's new to me because I either have forgotten or haven't been told about. So we had 2 retirements, right, this year, and you filled both of those positions. Did you move staff around a little bit?
So we had Paula Lockhart retired, Karen Amber, and Marianne Simcoe, who is a support staff member and been in both the primary school and the upper for quite a few years, also decided to retire at the end of this year. So we transferred. We always open it up for the Hall School District teachers to put in that they want to teach another grade level. So Sue Karen's moving to from 4th grade to 5th grade. And Amanda Inman, who's Tangway, she got married.
That's why I didn't know the name.
Yeah, I think that was the one. So Amanda Inman, formerly known as Miss Tangway, is going to move from 6th grade to 5th grade. So due to enrollments, just at this point in the game, we have 4 sections of 4th grade. So we didn't need to replace Sue Karen, and we did need to replace Amanda Inman at the 6th grade level. So that's why there's Bailey Ryan coming to us from Plymouth State University, highly recommended by the schools that she worked with in full year student teaching positions, and was really a great find for us. So we're excited to have her on board.
Very good. Thanks so much for clarifying, and I'm glad I wasn't just being forgetful. I wanted to comment, the Turtle Garden looked spectacular. So to the staff and volunteers who cleaned that up, it's just a tremendous job. And thanks to the landscaping company that donated their help with that. It really sort of was reassuring that the building's alive and well and that things are going to normalize someday. At least that's my perspective. It looks like from the enrollment numbers that I saw from our last enrollment report that I've could remember seeing in December. And this most recent enrollment report, it looks like we picked up a few kids over across the whole district. So that's encouraging. I always like to see more kids come to our schools. And it looks like our class enrollment size is healthy and acceptable within our ed specs. Do you have any inklings as to what's going to happen over the summer in terms of enrollment, or is it all just so up in the air with?
I think it's going to have to be a wait and see. This is our first summer where we'll have July and August board meetings, so we'll be able to give the board an update next month when we have more details on those.
Great, that's terrific. Thank you. Yep, that was all my notes. 4 sections of grade 4 for next year. Okay, that addresses another question I have.
We're receiving 84 students, or it looks like 83 right now from 3rd grade into 4th grade.
Okay.
And our numbers increase. You know, our minimum or whatever school board policy, can't remember what it was called, Tammy?
Yeah. Oh, that's policy.
Yeah, yeah. So it does definitely meet within that.
Appreciate that we don't have to point it out to you. That's terrific. It's just we're accountable, we're transparent, and we're taking care of our business like we're supposed to. That's great. If there aren't any further comments on the principal's report, we can move on to public input. Mr. Thompson, are there any public members?
I do have one other item.
Oh, I'm sorry, Rob.
Principal's report. Something that has been somewhat shared on social media around the vandalism incident at Hughes. I was wondering if we could hear from the superintendent on maybe he could summarize what took place and where we're at right now.
I'd be happy to. We had a couple individuals who were hitting golf balls up onto the roof at Hughes, which did some damage to the solar panels. The police have identified those individuals and are working with them. We deal with this through our SRO and the chief of police in town, and we are in constant communication. And typically, you know, working with the police department, we come to some sort of resolution that works best for all parties. They will provide us some recommendations, and we will inform them whether we believe those recommendations are sufficient. It doesn't often happen in the Hollis School District, being in an elementary district, but at the co-op district, we deal with these type of issues a little more frequently and have an outstanding relationship with our police department, and we'll be able to address this in the coming weeks.
Okay, and maybe we can hear more in July on this as developments present themselves?
Absolutely.
Okay. And the other thing that came to mind for me, Andy, is it seems like our systems worked properly. You know, our cameras and things like that did what it should. Do we feel like they're, well, and it may be too early to get into this at this point, but maybe in July, you know, I would be interested in hearing, you know, through this incident, do we see any things that we or the board would need to take up from a standpoint of enhancing any of our security systems or anything like that? But to my mind, it seemed like the things that we have in place now worked well. But I'm just trying to think of and cover all the bases here.
We'd be happy to review that and put that into the board packet next month and have a little more time on that discussion.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Rob. Any further comment from other members? If not, then I'd like to ask Mr. Thompson, are there members of the public interested in making public comment?
Not at this time.
All right. Typically, when we don't have members of the public at a live meeting, we agree just in good faith that if members of the public join us later in the meeting, we will attempt to make some room for public comment should they want to submit any. And if that's the sense of the board, then we'll just keep an open ear for anyone who might want to join us later. Any comments on that? Great. Next on our agenda is discussion items. We have a number of them. First up, Hollis Budget Committee.
I didn't know if Kelly and Kel, you wanted to do a quick update on the last Budget Committee meeting?
I just gave them some of the detail of how we were closing out the year, the different ways money was being spent, meaning, refreshing some of the technology that got loaned out during remote learning, things like that. And we obviously didn't have a final number budget for the year to share with them yet because the year hasn't technically ended. So we did just kind of, it was more of a casual update. So nothing specific from the budget committee at this time. They were happy to hear about the rates that we're going to discuss later on in this meeting. So that's good. And they, being the town, are also going to be looking at doing some refinancing based on some of that intel and coming back. There was a little bit of discussion back and forth actually about that of whether there are rates that are better that they're seeing and there can be some sort of referral. I'm not totally clear. I know Kelly might have a little more detail on that. I'm not sure how that association is made, but good discussion around that and just a closure of the.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that. I will say that they did get some rates for their financing, and Rachel shared that with me, and we're actually, with her exact numbers, very close to what the town is getting as well.
I wanted to comment that we talked with Andy about this a little bit, just briefly earlier today at H Smart, our facilities meeting, and he commented that towns typically can get somewhat better rates than school districts because towns are able to accumulate large unassigned funds pools the way Hollis has, which just gives them greater access to slightly lower rates. But by the time the town's rate was clarified and our rate was clarified, they're just very, very close to each other.
Well, that's what I was saying is I don't know how them having that rate would translate to us being able to also have that rate. That's what I.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. It's an incredibly low rate, right? We're doing very, very well. So it's a good time to have a project like this. Further comments from members? Okay, next on our list is SAU 41 school year transition planning.
All right, I'm going to get us started with that. And to do that, I'm going to share my screen. This is in your board packet. So just to get us started, so, we are well underway with the transition planning for the 2020-2021 school year. So as a SAU leadership team, we've developed a framework. And as you all know, a framework is a plan for a plan. And our framework really borrows from those of you that are familiar with FEMA, their incident command model. And that was really intentional because, what we're really talking about is emergency management planning. Risk mitigation and risk management. And that is something as a district we do very, very well. When you look at the FEMA incident command model, you're really looking at a very efficient way to manage your resources, clear decision making, and open lines of communication. So if you look at all of these different areas, and Gina will speak to each one of these areas shortly, you'll notice that all of them report back to the superintendent. You're going to make a series of recommendations. And those recommendations are based upon 3 possible models that are outlined in some of the reports that are included in this document. Mainly the CDC. There's 3 possible models. Model 1 is a remote learning model, which is what we were experienced for the last quarter of the year. Then we have a hybrid model. And a hybrid model would really exist for one of 2 purposes. One would be if we needed to meet some specific social distancing guidelines that didn't allow us to have all students in the building at once. Or a hybrid model could be used to accommodate families who are either unwilling or unable to send their children back to school in the fall. So that's really what we'd be looking at when we look at a hybrid model. And then the third model would be to resume on-site learning for all students. So we're planning for all 3 of these, and as we get closer to, into the summer, when conditions may change, more guidance may come out, we will have one of these models that we will look to implement for the school year, and the other 2 will become our contingency plans, and really what we in emergency management you call continuity of operation plan. So if we go with a full return to school, conditions change, and we need to seamlessly roll into another model, we will have done the planning to be able to do that. So the planning that we've begun doing is based upon the documents that you see listed in the report that was shared with you. Just gonna go down here. So basically what we've done as a leadership team is we've spent the last few months, really in early April, going through and looking at all of the government and non-government agency reports that offered guidance on returning to school. So, you know, the CDC is one of them, American Academy of Pediatrics, EPA, the Learning Policy Institute. I don't need to read the whole list. We've gone through these reports in a very comprehensive way. No one report gives us a clear guideline for returning to school. What they do is they provide us with some considerations, things that we should think about before we make the decision to go back to school. And what we've done is we've gone through those reports, we've gathered all of the considerations, and we've formed these various committees that Gina will talk about in a moment. But to my earlier point, no single one offers you all of the solutions. Obviously, a report like the EPA focuses on things like air quality. The Learning Policy Institute speaks to the various countries that have returned to school and what those models sort of look like. So I think at this time, I'll turn it over to Gina, who can talk a little bit about each one of those working groups and the various considerations.
Thank you. So if you could just scroll up a little bit, that would be helpful. Maybe to the first page of this transition framework. So I just want to piggyback off.
Does everyone else see it? My screen is just black. Is it just me?
Yeah, I see it.
Oh, okay. So I'll just pull it up on try to pull up the thing on my phone. My screen share didn't work for some reason. Sorry.
Can you click the screen share button and see if that helps somehow? Do you see one?
Yeah, I think that would activate her computer to share on. I'm not sure. I'm not a Zoom expert, but
that's okay. I'll just find the packet. But thank you.
All right, go ahead, Gina.
Okay. So just to continue off what Bob started saying, the SAU leadership team took a look at all of these guiding references, these documents, and with the considerations, and then we divided them into different categories. And as Bob had mentioned, really utilizing the incident command model, identifying smaller working groups that could focus their efforts on a narrower selection of considerations, if you will. So that the subcommittees we wanted the subcommittees to really be driven by results oriented. We have a lot of work to do, and we have a short period of time, and we need to make sure that we're going to be able to produce some recommendations for the superintendent to consider. We also wanted to make sure that we had representation by all the districts, by all the appropriate grade levels, by the appropriate folks who would be dealing with that particular focus area. And so, this is a great opportunity for different folks to work together who have never met each other. So it's definitely been an interesting time. We have a committee, instructional committee, and this committee deals with things such as school day, materials, going paperless, gaps in learning. The considerations for the instructional committee are, far greater depth than just the quick things that I put out there. How many students can we safely fit in a standard 900 square foot classroom if social distancing requirements remain in place? So we actually went to the buildings and moved desks with a tape measure and figured out what does it look like if we follow some of the social distancing guidelines. Is it possible? What happens to the number of students and teachers and paraprofessionals that we can actually fit in a classroom? How do we minimize transmission of the virus through surface contact? So do we go paperless? Do we have the capacity to issue each student their own device if they don't have their own device that they're able to bring back and forth to school? Do we consider closing the computer labs, the school library, any space that's accessed by a large number of students. So those are just some of the many considerations that the instructional subcommittee is considering. I also want, I want to back up a little bit. The facilitators of these groups were members of the leadership team that were not the SAU leadership team. We wanted the building level admin to take to kind of lead these subcommittees so that they could directly lead the work that's to be done in their own building as well. And so the first name that's in italics is the facilitator for that committee. All right, then we have technology. So this is anything from actual distribution of materials to recommendations for instructional technology to recommendations for what is that kind of sweet spot for a lesson to be delivered remotely. Is there a maximum time? You know, what kind of parameters do we set now that we have time to stand back, reflect, and then potentially move forward into that model again? What is considered best practice? What model were we able to achieve maximum results? So, like I said, that includes considerations like how do we ensure resources work with the devices that students have? What additional professional development do we need to specifically offer teachers and families and kiddos? We pushed out a lot of different resources, and how do we know that the students knew how to utilize them? How do we know that the parents can then support the students with this, all this new technology? Is Zoom the best platform? Do we have to consider another platform? And like I said, creating how-to videos and how-to documents for everybody. We also have human resources. Human resources deals with anything from our hundreds of volunteers that help us run our districts to, returning to work. A lot of our folks have been working remotely, and what does it look like when they return to the buildings? And then, of course, considering our collective bargaining agreements, we have 6 of them, and how do we ensure that recommendations that we make to the superintendent are in line with the collective bargaining agreements. So some specifics are, what do the opening days of school look like? Those are 3 PD days. They're going to be jam-packed with information this year, more so than ever before. How do we continue to function with potentially limiting the number of volunteers in our buildings when they play such a critical role to the day-to-day progress? And, what would happen if we return to the building and then there is a positive case? What is the district response at that point? Moving along to health and safety considerations. What is the reasonableness of temperature checking all faculty and students upon entry? Is self-reporting a better model of temperature or of symptoms? Once again, what is our protocol for responding if or when a staff or student contracts the virus? So as you can see, a lot of these considerations are considerations for a couple of different subcommittees. So there is some intentional overlap and then some overlap that we then kind of further consider and then assign to a particular subcommittee. But here's a big one. We're so good with this incident command. We're so good with safety drills. How do we do a fire drill if we need to ensure social distancing?
Yeah.
There's so many important things that are just part of our standard day at school, and how do we do that? How do we reset our minds around that? And then we have facilities. So once again, some of these considerations could go in one or the other, but are masks a recommendation? Are they a requirement? Face shields a recommendation? Are they a requirement? How do we manage some of our younger learners if we are going to then, make a recommendation that that masks are required or that they're not? How do we respond if we state that masks are required and then there's a refusal? What does the nurse's office look like? Do we have to have different rooms for those who are coming for a daily medication versus those who are arriving for because symptoms have come about. So really looking at our facilities to see, can we create, you know, a secondary nurse facility? Can we add plexiglass to the reception areas? Can we add plexiglass in front of the teacher? What is the recommendation for that sort of protection? Do we use water fountains, or do we restrict to only water bottle filling stations? What if we don't have water bottle filling stations? Do we shift our custodial hours to different times of the day to ensure different types of sanitizing spaces at different hours than what we typically have run in a school day? What HVAC considerations need to be accounted for and evaluated? You know, what products are safest? So if we're cleaning surfaces, that's great, but we want to make sure they're then safe to then touch. If a student were to then, or a teacher were to then go into that, let's say that desk. We also have student services. So how do we account for intensive social and emotional needs of all of our students, not just a small population, but all of our students are going to be returning and have experienced a very different 13 weeks. And what does that look like? How do we progress monitor students? So here's some overlap with instruction. How do we account for any gaps that may have been created during this time of remote learning? For all of our students, how do we target those and ensure that we're moving our students forward without, you know, sort of test fatigue and over testing our kids? How do we support students with complex medical needs? That's going to be that is a huge consideration as well. You know, especially if the complex medical needs are going to require that the student not return to school. So what then? What is our response? You know, are there consequences if students refuse to social distance and social distance was the recommendation? You know, moving on to food service. So do we have lunches? Do we just do a bag lunch and deliver to classrooms? So what does supervision look like? Because we have CBA requirements for duty-free lunches. And do we have enough folks to supervise students if we are actually eating in the classroom? What does that do to our food-based allergies? How do we account for the potential disruption of the master schedule if we have to shrink our lunches or space them out differently? Also, if food distribution takes place in the cafeteria, can we add plexiglass? Do we consider moving to cashless transactions only? And considering the small fee that's attached to my school box, whose responsibility is it to cover that if we refuse to accept cash? Moving on to extracurricular. Do we hold clubs? Do we hold clubs only remotely, only through Zoom? A lot of our athletic considerations are directed by other agencies, but then do we just go with that, or do we have our own maybe stricter guidelines within our own district for athletics? How soon should outside organizations access our building for facility use requests? Also, field trips. So extracurricular is kind of morphed into co-curricular, and do we restrict field trips? We're then going on to buses, and what does that look like in terms of social distancing on the bus, in terms of going to different spaces that we don't necessarily have as much control over, and do we go out of state for field trips, or do we limit our field trips to the state of New Hampshire? And then transportation is mostly our transportation company giving us their proposal for how they're going to manage it in the fall. However, we do have to also consider how do we manage student parking at the high school? Do we need to make modifications to our current carpool protocol in all of our buildings? What about employee parking? Do you have to make any considerations or requests about when to enter or exit the vehicle? So those are the initial considerations that we've come up with. However, in meeting number 1 of all these subcommittees, the task was to review them and then add specific considerations that may not have been part of all of these guiding references. And so the lists have only grown since then. And then on the second meeting, the third, and then we'll continue on, is just to make a decision with a recommendation to the superintendent for his consideration. And so that right there is a little bit of what we've been up to.
Just a little bit, eh? I have to intrude this awful thought onto my fellow school board members. We are going to be losing our admin staff to their next public obligated meeting at 6, and we have an enormous amount of work left to do on this agenda, including a public hearing and a non-public session that are really mandated. This is the most important topic of all, is what, you know, under the current circumstances that Gina has just reviewed. And I think all of us would love to ask a million questions, but I have to ask the board, given the time critical nature of these other elements on our agenda, could I ask that we hold our questions for a July meeting when a firmer set of recommendations will be forthcoming? I'd like you to each comment, if you will.
That's fine, but if we have anything we want to send to Gina, would she accept any sort of feedback or questions via email? Okay.
Let the record show a thumbs up from Mrs. Bergscott. Brooke, is this an acceptable suggestion to you, Amy?
I just wanted to understand, and maybe it was said, how frequently the teams are meeting and whether it's in person or remotely, just to get an understanding of how the work is unfolding in you know, really it is a short timeline for the vast amount of work that needs to be done. It's wild, but otherwise, yes. So if I could just understand, that seems like a straightforward question.
It varies by committee, but I would say at a minimum, 1 to 2 times a week. And then every Wednesday morning, all the facilitators meet with the SAU leadership team and report out. And that's when we kind of identify maybe any duplicate efforts or anything like that, and provide guidance on, okay, this is the direction your committee should be going.
And I have just one very quick question that feeds onto that. Thanks, Brooke. Have you guys identified a drop dead date where you will make a decision of what's happening regardless of any more flux and information that we get?
Sure, my apologies. So the recommendations would go to Andy early July for him to review and then make decisions to be presented at a mid to late July board meeting. But once again, we have 3 different models, so that wouldn't be the decision on which model we would go with, but just the decision would be on the whole plan. And then as more information comes to us, then Andy would make the final decision on school or remote or what.
Okay, yeah, I know that that's a big interest point for parents to be able to plan what they're going to need to do depending on which model we choose. So I want to give them as much, we all, as much notice as possible. The royal we. Thanks,
Okay.
Gina.
I'm fine with having a more detailed conversation next month. I'll just piggyback off what Carol said and say I think your communication throughout this pandemic has been exceptional, and I think parents are just going to want as much communication, you know, as soon as we can provide it to them.
It's uncomfortable having to abbreviate this part of the discussion, but we have some really big obligations here we've got to get through. So I appreciate everyone's flexibility, and we're looking forward to a much more detailed, informative, obviously, report on this in July. Thanks, everyone. Extended school year is the next item on our agenda. Who's going to grab that one? Okay.
Yeah, so I can do this very quick. I know we're under a time crunch, but you know, our extended school year will get underway on June 29th. It will run until August 13th. We've added 2 additional weeks. One is to account for the earlier into the school year, and the adding an extra week on at the end accounts for the fact that we start a little bit later this year. So our students will be afforded the opportunity for 2 additional weeks of instruction in ESY. The vast majority of our students will receive their ESY program remotely. We have a very small number of students that will actually go on site to receive those services. And the students that will be on site, we've actually consolidated our on-site services to be just at Halls Brookline High School. And we chose Halls Brookline High School because there's been a small cohort of students who have actually been going on site for remote learning, students with some significant disabilities. And we have very tight safety protocols that are put in place. And rather than reinventing the wheel and having ESY in multiple buildings, we just thought it made sense to use the high school as the site. The students who will receive services will be in the building by themselves. There won't be any other students. They'll be on a rotating schedule that allows them to receive their services with utmost safety and health measures put into place. And overall, we do have 51 students who are attending ESY remotely, and we have 4 students who will receive on-site services for ESY. And at this time, I'll take any questions that the board might have.
I think there are lots of questions probably, but again, the time constraint is extreme. So unless anyone has a specific question or request of the staff on this topic, we're going to move on. I can't say enough about how important this extended school year programming is. I can't say enough about how ahead of the curve SAU 41 is for adding these 3 extra weeks, the 2 up front, to deal with shortfalls in this school year, and the 1 tagged at the end of the summer to address the late start because of how late Labor Day falls on the calendar. These are critically important services to these critically important students. And I personally just appreciate how ahead of this SAU 41 has been. So if no other comments, H-Smart update.
Yeah, just a quick update. I just want to let the board know that everything is progressing nicely. We meet weekly. We have selected our lighting company that will be replacing the lights both internally and externally at the 2 buildings. We have also selected our insulation company that will be doing some work up at Hughes. And we are finalizing details around our mechanical upgrades with regards to our heating systems, HVAC units up at the upper, and air source heat pumps down at the primary school. Tonight, we're also going to discuss the lease, and for those community members who may be watching this later on, our interest rate on that was 1.82%, so we're really excited about that. And we will continually have updates throughout the months of July and August. We expect all construction to be done August 15th, so that we'll be ready to open school if that's the choice we make.
Excellent. And again, it's a phased project, so it's not that the entire project will be done August 15, but the elements that were planned for this summer will be aimed for ending August 15. SAU rent is, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon, board members, questions, comments on H-Smart? Excellent. SAU rent.
Yeah, this is just an item to get kind of out ahead of this. As you know, when we went to look at renovating the barn, one of the questions we got back from the Hollis Budget Committee was what were we going to do with the rent? So by putting on tonight's agenda here in Hollis and Brookline and the co-op, we're providing notice that we need to take some steps if we intend to move forward with the bond project, because again, the budget committees would like to see some of the cost of the bond be offset by some of the rent that comes in. So I'm just trying to get out ahead because before we know it, it'll be the FY22 budget and we'll be moving through at light speed.
Board members, comments, questions? Okay, I'll be interested to hear more about this. So our next item on our agenda is this public hearing. We'll be addressing the Building Maintenance Trust and the Water System Trust. So I would like a motion, please, to recess the current public meeting of this Hollis School Board by roll call. Could I have a motion, please? I need a member to motion if you don't.
I'm getting to it.
Oh, okay, fine.
Go ahead, Brooke.
Okay, I regard their motion to recess the current public meeting. Is that the wording? I'm sorry, is that sufficient?
Fine.
That's fine. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Carol. And by roll call?
Carol, I.
Amy, I.
Brooke, aye.
Tammy, aye. And I believe Rob Mann has stepped out of the meeting, so he's not here to vote. Very good. So I'm calling the opening of the public hearing at 5:35 today, Wednesday, June 17. Our public hearing addresses the Building Maintenance Trust and the Water System Trust. I don't believe we need to go through the same COVID-19 remote meeting affirmations, which are on our suggestions from our secretary.
We do not. You can proceed forward.
So the first item is the Building Maintenance Trust, and either Andy or Kelly.
Well, and Bob, can you share the screen to those pages?
Yep. Hold on one second. I shared the wrong screen.
While you're sharing, I'll just read the blurb. In accordance with RSA 198-20-C, we will provide an explanation of proposed expenditures from the Hollis School Building Maintenance Expendable Trust Fund.
Thank you, Tammy. So as you can see, there is a list here, and I'll go through them, but these were all identified in the budget process for FY21. So there is one item on here, the cameras for Hughes, that has already been spent. That was part of the Public School Infrastructure Fund grant. What a mouthful. And that was our portion of that. So that piece has already been spent. Everything else is awaiting your approval for us to proceed starting this summer. And Hughes on their list has bathroom flooring, the installation of air source heat pumps in the admin office, which is a replacement, and the nurse one is an additional air source heat pump. Classroom furniture is on this as replacements, and as I said, the camera has already been spent. The parking lot and Drury Lane will be sealed in Hughes as well as HPS. You'll see that's on their list as well. Also in HPS is exterior painting. This is the red portion of the building, the gym portion, the outside, and also there's the ground level painting where the new siding was put on when we did the H-step project. They also have classroom furniture, which is replacement, and they have a huge need for storage in HPS, so that is phase 2 of that project. They have carpet in their main office. They also have flooring projects, both of which are at end of life. They have some safety and repair issues in the playground that they'd like to take care of, mostly surrounding fencing. And then we need to, at some point, start dealing with the bathrooms in HPS, which, if we touch them in any way, are no longer grandfathered. So we will use the same architect that we are using for H-Smart and for H-Step to help us get that process started by understanding what we need to do to be compliant once we touch things. And then again, I also already mentioned the parking lot ceiling. So those are the recommendations for the use of the maintenance trust as we decided on through the budget process. And then I also have listed below there the current balance, what we will end up adding based on what we just voted in the Hollis annual meeting, as well as the expenditures that you're seeing listed above there. So at the end of FY21, we anticipate the balance to be 122,189. And of course, that's an anticipated number because those are estimates. They could be a little bit more, a little bit less. Heading on down, there is no planned use at this time for the SAU expendable trust because we had put forth the warrant article for the barn. And if you keep going down, you will see the water system expendable trust, which does have an amount there that we would like approval for. This has been spent. This was an emergency repair for the water control system related to the pumps and the Rocky Pond pump station. I don't know what I'm saying here. So that will bring the balance down from 45,000 to 40,000. And lastly is the special ed trust, which you can see the balance there. No planned use at this time.
Thank you, Kelly. Comments, questions? I'll ask real quick. Do you feel like I don't have any sense of how COVID has hit our current year expenditures, let alone any other elements that might have rocked our boat. Do you feel that we are within shooting distance of these trust funding the trust funding that the warrant allowed us to do?
Yes, I believe that what you have as unreserved fund balance at the end of this year will fund those items on the trust, on all of those trusts.
And in terms of the SAU, when we decided to not seek funding for any projects at the SAU through the trust because we had hoped that the barn project would pass, is that going to leave the facility in any kind of a lurch?
There's nothing screaming at the moment other than the barn, I guess, is screaming, but nothing in the SAU building itself that we have not already addressed.
We'd love to know what this emergency water thing is. I can't remember what you told us, but the time is ticking very fast, and I'm very, very anxious to move on. Do any of the members have any further comments or questions regarding these trust issues? I assume, Bob, there are no members of the public wanting to give us public input?
There's not.
I'm assuming that because I don't see anyone on the screen. I apologize if I'm wrong. In that case, if there are no members of the public waiting to give public comment in this public hearing, then I would take a motion to recess the public hearing. Sorry, I beg your pardon, to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Carol. The hearing is closed at 5:42. The board is reconvening immediately after 5:42 also. We are 15 minutes behind or so on our plans, and Bob will have to leave at 6 o'clock for his next board meeting, so we really need to keep moving. Our next element, our next item on our agenda is board deliberations, and we had talked about discussing and deliberating on and voting on the resolution for the municipal lease purchase for H Smart. Can we take that up at this time?
Yes, we can do that. What I'll do with the chair's permission, I'll read the motion that legal counsel has suggested, let that come to the floor. Then I'll go through the other elements of the resolution, and then at that point, take questions or a vote.
Okay.
So the motion reads, I move that the resolution entitled, Resolution to Authorize Lease Purchase of Energy Conservation and Related Improvements at District Schools in principal amount not to exceed $3,108,900 be approved in form presented to this meeting, and that an attested copy of said resolution be included with the minutes of this meeting.
Can I have a motion on that?
I move that the resolution entitled, is this the right one?
Yes. Carol's allowed to just say so moved.
Oh, so moved. Let's go with that.
Second.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay. Let me just run through this. As you can see, Bob has screen shared it with you. That pursuant to RSA 33:7-E, the superintendent of schools is authorized in consultation with the facilities committee to manage and administer the acquisition and installation of energy conservation equipment and related improvements at Hollis Upper Elementary School and Hollis Primary School. The project, including execution and delivery of design, engineering, construction, and other contracts and documents at a total project cost not to exceed $3,108,900, and any such prior action by the superintendent is hereby ratified and confirmed. That the superintendent is authorized to accept the lease purchase financing proposal by TD Enterprise Finance Incorporated, the lessor, dated May 19, 2020. The proposal to provide lease purchase financing of the project in principal amount not to exceed $3,108,900, and to execute and deliver a lease purchase agreement with the lessor in such form not inconsistent with the terms of the proposal and the resolution as the superintendent may approve. Said approval to be conclusively evidenced by the execution and delivery thereof, the lease. That the superintendent is authorized to execute and deliver an escrow agreement with the lessor or its nominee, or with a third-party financial or trust institution, if applicable, to hold funds in an escrow account pending disbursement for the project. Said escrow account to be on such terms not inconsistent with the proposal and its resolution as the superintendent may approve, including within limitations of provision granting lessor or third-party financial or trust institutions a security interest in the escrow account. Said approval to be conclusively evidenced by the execution or delivery thereof. That the superintendent is authorized to designate the lease as applicable as a qualified tax-exempt obligation within the meaning of Section 265B3 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended. That the superintendent is authorized to convene on behalf of the district. No part of the proceeds of the lease shall be used directly or indirectly to acquire any securities or obligation. The acquisition of said would cause a lease to be arbitrage bond within the meaning of Section 148 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986. The proceeds of the lease and the equipment financed by the lease shall not be used in a manner that would cause the lease to be a private activity bond within the meaning of Section 141 of the Code. That the superintendent is authorized to execute and deliver such tax certificates, arbitrage and use of proceeds certificates, and other documents as certified as may, in the superintendent's opinion, be necessary or convenient to effect the transaction herein authorized, to be in such form not inconsistent with the resolution as the superintendent may approve, said approval to be conclusively evidenced by the execution and delivery thereof. That the superintendent and other appropriate officials of the district act singly are authorized to execute and deliver on behalf of the lease such security agreements, UCCI financing statements, fixture filings, and other documents and certificates as may be required in connection with the lease and escrow agreement. That the superintendent is authorized to covenant, certify, and agree on behalf of the district for benefit of the lease, that the district will file any required reports, make any annual financial or material event disclosure, and take any other actions that may be necessary to ensure the disclosure requirements imposed by Rule 15C2-12 of the Security and Exchange Commission to the extent explicable. That the superintendent, in consultation with bond counsel, is authorized to implement written procedures. Let me just, for the public at home, I was in the midst of doing the resolution for the lease, and unexpectedly, we had a technical difficulty. So at that point, we are re-accessing Zoom. We have started the recording of that, and we will meld the two recordings together. We do have a quorum, so with the chair's permission, I would move forward, or would you prefer me to wait?
I think we should move on because I know you have the next thing, the next meeting that you've got to get to. So you're in the middle of item 9 in the lease resolution, and that we will need to vote on as a board. So I hope that you start from the beginning of item 9 and continue.
Item 9 says that the superintendent, in consultation with bond counsel, is authorized to implement written procedures with respect to the lease for the purpose of ensuring timely remedial action for any portion of the lease that may become non-qualified bonds, as those terms are defined in the code of regulations thereunder, and monitoring the district's complying following execution of the lease with an arbitrage, yield restriction, and rebate requirements of the code of regulations thereunder.
Oh, there she is.
Number 10, that the superintendent is authorized and empowered in the name and on behalf of the district to do or cause to do all such other acts, things as may be necessary or desirable in order to effect the lease and escrow agreement and the completion of the project in accordance herewith, and any such prior action by them is hereby ratified and confirmed. That if the lease, that if the superintendent is for any reason unavailable to, as applicable, approve, execute, or attest the lease, escrow agreement, any related financing documents, or documents related to the project, the person or persons acting in any such capacity, whether as an assistant, a deputy, or otherwise, is authorized to act for such official with the same force and effect as if such official himself or herself performed such act. 12, the appropriate officials of the district are authorized to execute on behalf of the district such other documents and certificates necessary or convenient to the execution and delivery of the lease and escrow agreement. 13, the school board hereby declares its official intent pursuant to section 1.150-2E of the income tax regulations that the district reasonably expects to use the proceeds of tax-exempt financing to reimburse certain original expenditures from the district's general fund that were made within 60 days prior to adoption of this resolution, or that are to be made after adoption of this resolution, which original expenditures have been or will be incurred in connection with the project, that the district reasonably expects that the maximum principal amount incurred by the district to finance the project will not exceed $3,108,900, and that this declaration of official intent shall be kept in the permanent records of the district and shall be easily available for public inspection, and that an attested copy of this resolution be filed with the minutes of this meeting. So that is the lease.
Thank you, Andy. Quite the drama. So we have a motion on the floor that's been seconded. We can open for discussion on this resolution.
Is this the standard resolution that we always make when we have projects like this?
Yes, it is. It's a very lengthy document, but it encompasses the various aspects that could occur, though unlikely, but it's always better to have the resolution firmly state what they are. And our bond counsel has created this. It's the same basic resolution that we used for the last project, and we've used it in other districts as well.
Thank you.
This is the lease agreement, right, Andy? Sorry, it's been several months and a few pandemics later since our March meeting.
Yeah, this is the official approval of the 1.82% with TD Bank to proceed forward with HSmart.
Okay, and that's on as a lease, municipal lease, not a bond?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Any other input? All right, very well. In that case, let's have our roll call vote on this resolution and the motion that's on the floor. Carol, would you like to start?
Well, I was going to, and then you said something else that we were going to do, so I wanted to make sure I heard everything.
I'm sorry.
Do we need to make a motion to accept this, or can we just vote
and
say yes?
That's on the floor.
Carol, aye.
Amy, aye.
Rodney and I.
Okay, Tammy, aye. I believe we got all 5 of us. So the motion is carried unanimously. Thank you all. Our next deliberation item is to see what action the board will take regarding the administration's recommendations for the Hollis School District Maintenance Trust, the building maintenance trust that Kelly went over. So if I could have a motion, please.
Motion to authorize the expenditure of an amount not to exceed $118,481 from the school building maintenance expendable trust fund for the purchase of the maintenance items identified during the public hearing.
Second.
Any further discussion? In that case, a viva voce roll call, please.
Carol, I.
Amy, I.
Brooke, aye.
Rob, aye.
Tammy, aye. Thank you. That's unanimous. Motion carries. The third item concerns the water system expendable trust, emergency service and repairs to the water system at the Rocky Pond location. Total cost $5,734, as Kelly outlined earlier during the public hearing. If I could have a motion, please.
Motion to authorize the expenditure of $5,734 from the Hollis School District Water System Expendable Trust Fund to cover the cost of emergency service and repairs to the water system at the Rocky Pond Road location performed in 2020.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Carol, I.
Amy, I.
Brooke, aye.
Rob, aye.
Tammy, aye. Thank you. The motion carries unanimous. So that concludes the deliberative session, items on our deliberative session, and we now need to go into a non-public session. So we can, Andy, we still have enough time to get through this?
Yes, we've got it coordinated between the three of us.
Great.
What we'll need you to do is Bob has sent out a link for the non-public, because obviously that has to be separate. So each of you will be receiving the link for non-public, and we'll be reconvening in non-public very shortly. But we don't intend to, we can take all our votes and motions in non-public, so that we will not have.
But we do need a public motion and vote to go into non-public here.
Correct.
Okay, so could I have that motion to go into non-public, please?
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Okay, all in favor by roll call?
Carol, I.
Amy, I.
Brooke, aye.
Rob, aye.
Tammy, aye. And that's at 6:02. The board goes into non-public session.
So we transition to the other link at this point? Is that the plan?
Yep, I sent it to you earlier. I will resend it when I get into the meeting. And I promise this time it will not, I will not end the meeting.
And I believe our only public motion after the non-public is adjournment. We don't have any more public business to transact. Is that correct?
According to the agenda, correct. Do we need to come back on this line to adjourn?
Oh,
Andy, you're on mute.
Andy, you're on mute.
We do not need to come back onto this public to adjourn, because we've informed the public of our intent to have non-public and then adjourn.
All right, thank you.
Just wanted it on the record. Thank you.
Yep.
That's a good question.
All right, so we
All
can
right.
just leave the meeting without further format, right? Without.
Correct.
Correct.
All right.
We'll put up Bob's new link.
All right, thank you.